Theo Rodriguez's fingers trembled on Braille keys as Doll's eyes locked onto him. The piano's damp wool smell clung to his skin, thick as the morning dew pooling in the bunker's cracked floorboards. His right index finger, tracing the raised dots of the F-sharp key, brushed something cold and wrong. Not a dot. A ridge. A tooth embedded deep in the keyhole's brass mechanism, its root exposed like a fossilized worm. The air tasted of rust and stagnant water. He pried it free with his pocket knife, the blade scraping against the tooth's uneven surface, a dry, brittle freckle, like snapping sun-bleached bone. Blood welled instantly from his cut finger, warm and metallic, dripping onto the tooth's root. The pipe beneath the piano gurgled, not sobbing, but a guttural wet cough, the sound of a fisherman choking on river mud. Gurgle, gurgle, it echoed in the hollow space under the floorboards, a sound that made his own breath hitch. His finger bled faster now, crimson mixing with the tooth's ivory. He watched the blood drop onto the tooth's root, a slow, thick funplink against the brass keyhole. The tooth felt unnaturally warm in his palm, its surface cool to the touch yet radiating a faint heat. He turned it over. The root end, where the blood pooled, reflected the tooth's own unnatural sheen. The cat materialized from the shadow beneath the piano bench, a jet-black shape against the antique gold lace wallpaper. Its single milky white eye fixed on the tooth, then on his bleeding finger. The cat's eye glowed faintly, not with light but with a cold internal funpulse that mirrored the blood's slow seep. The cat's eye funpulse died, a soft rhythmic throb like a tiny wet heartbeat. The floorboard beneath his foot softened, yielding like flesh, and the air grew thick with the scent of copper and damp earth. The cat's white eye pulsed again, deeper now, reflecting the tooth's root, the blood, the brass keyhole. The pipe's gurgle intensified, a wet sucking sound that seemed to vibrate up through the floorboards into his bones. The cat's white eye footined. The pipe's gurgle was a wet thing, like a throatful of river mud being wrung out by unseen hands. I followed it, my fingers brushing the wall as I moved, the bunker's air thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something old. The floorboards beneath my feet were not wood, not anymore. They were something softer, something that gave like old gums under a tongue. I stepped forward and the board beneath my left foot yielded. The sound of it a wet squelchy that echoed in my ears. The cat was behind me now, its black body coiled like a shadow on the wall, its single white eye fist-pulsing in the dark. I turned, and the cat's eye sucked in light, leaving only that one white orb aglow, a cold, wet thing that seemed to side-look through me. I pressed on, my hand finding the pipe, its surface slick and warm like the inside of a wet mouth. I touched it, and it twelched beneath my fingers, the sound matching the wet breathing that I could now hear directly behind my neck. A sound that was not my own. My left ear bled, the blood running down my neck and into the pipe. The sound of it, a foot-clinkety, a foot-a-plink-a-plink, a foot-a-plink that echoed in the hollow corridors. The pipe fookugled, and from deep within its belly came a voice that was not mine at all. It was my father's voice, and it said, "Your father's teeth." The dark was not a thing to be seen, but a thing to be shoe-tasted, thick, sweet, like the syrup left in the bottom of a glass that never quite empties. My fingers found the wall, the texture of it slick with something warm, something for breathing. The pipe's gurgle had thickened, now a wet cough, each ragged exhalation dripping like a lung full of tar. I pressed my palm against the wall, and the surface sent a pulse to beneath my fingers, not like flesh, but like the side of a bloated corpse. The skin stretched too thin over something wrong inside. Then, nothing. No light, no shape, no eye. The cat had been a shadow with a single white pupil, a beacon in the dark. Now it was just tiffy dark. The air smelled of rust and spoiled milk, the kind that sat too long in the sun and turned to something sour. My chest tightened. Not fear. Not yet. Something else, something tween recognition. The way a song plays backward in your head until you realize it's not a song at all. Just the echo of your own heartbeat. Wrong, 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 wrong. I stepped forward, my foot sinking into the floorboard. Not wood. Not even rot. The surface when yielded, soft as a tongue probing a loose tooth, the sound a wet schlick that echoed like a mouth trying to swallow itself. The pipe's cough grew louder, each spasm sending a tremor through the walls. My left ear still bled, the copper taste sharp on my tongue. I touched my neck, fingers coming away sticky, warm. The blood had stopped, or had it? Behind me, the cat's absence was a presence. No eye, no fur, no breathers, just the silence of something waiting. The wall bubbled. Not moved, not breathed. Tumbledeed like a blister popping, like a mouth trying to speak, but only letting out a wet, choked twinglurp. My fingers dug into the surface, and the texture changed beneath my touch. Not hard, not soft, but twin slippery, like the inside of a raw egg left too long in the sun. The pipe's cough turned to a gurgle, a sound that wasn't water but something thicker, something that 20 stretched past. I pressed harder. The wall front ripped, not tore, not split. Ripped like wet parchment, like the skin of a fruit that's been pressed too long, the juice oozing out in slow, thick streams. My fingers slipped into the gap, and the heat was soon alive, not warm but hungry, like the breath of a thing that had been asleep for too long. The pipe's gurgle became a scream, but not in my ears. It seeded my skull, a sound that wasn't sound at all but Tifo, the kind that builds behind your eyes when you hold your breath too long. And then, the wall fin closed, not snapped, not sealed. Closed dead, like a mouth snapping shut over a finger. My hand was trapped, the skin sticking to something toes, something pulsing. The pipe's scream turned to silence, and the dark was silent complete. The wall gurgled again, a wet, insistent sigh that seemed to emanate not from the pipe, but from the very stone itself. It was a section, maybe 3 feet square, that had separated from the rest, a bulging, unstable pocket in the oppressive darkness. I pressed closer, the antique gold light of my lamp catching on something within 40 a thick, undulating pile of black lace. It wasn't draped or folded. It 20 flowed, a silent, suffocating river of fabric. The smell intensified, a cloying sweetness layered over the usual rot, like overripe figs left to ferment. My fingers, numb from the cold and the lingering copper taste in my mouth, reached out. The lace felt wrong. Not rough, not smooth, but tweed-yielding, like the surface of a water lily pad, deceptively solid until the weight descends. I hesitated, the memory of the pulsing wall, the slippery texture, a cold knot in my stomach. The pipe's sobs deepened, coalescing into a voice, a low, guttural murmur that seemed to vibrate not through the air but directly into my bones. You are the lace. Or the words weren't clear, more a feeling than a sound, a pressure against my temples. I ignored it, dismissing it as the continued unraveling of my senses. I reached further, my fingers sinking into the lace, and it 20 moved-eyed, not with a rustle, but a squelch-shy, a sound like something wet and viscous being compressed. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something floral, sickly sweet. The gold light flickered, momentarily revealing the lace in stark detail, sooty, intricate patterns of black thread woven into a fabric that seemed to breathe, the tiny holes expanding and contracting with a slow, deliberate rhythm. A memory surfaced: my grandmother, her hands perpetually stained with dye, painstakingly crafting these same patterns. She'd always said lace held secrets, that each stitch was a prayer, a promise, a warning. I dismissed it as the ramblings of a woman haunted by her past. Now, the lace felt like a snare, a silken trap closing around my hand. The pipe's voice returned, clearer this time, a whisper against my ear. His eyes tried to pull my hand away, but the lace had begun to bind. Not tightly, not yet, but with a slow, insidious pressure. It felt alive, the threads intertwining around my wrist, a dark, silken embrace. The texture shifted again, the yielding surface hardening, becoming strangely adhesive. It was like trying to free my hand from a swarm of tiny, grasping insects. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the suffocating silence of the bunker. The air grew colder, the antique gold light struggling against a creeping darkness. The lace tightened, the squelching sound intensifying, a chorus of whispers against my skin. I could feel it now, not just on my wrist, but creeping up my arm, a slow, relentless tide of black fabric. A wave of nausea washed over me, the taste of copper returning to my mouth, stronger this time, metallic and bitter. I strained against the lace, my muscles burning, the pipe's voice rising to a low, mournful wail. His eyes. The words echoed in my head, a relentless, insidious rhythm. The lace tightened again, a sharp, stinging pressure. I looked down, and the lace wasn't just binding my wrist. It was saving, growing, tendrils reaching towards my elbow, my shoulder, a creeping darkness consuming my arm. The antique gold light pulsed, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the walls, mocking my struggle. I could feel something shifting within the lace, a subtle movement, a tightening, a knowing. The cat's fur was slick with the morning dew, the kind that clung to the earth like a thin film of milk, cold and slick against my palm. I knelt, my fingers pressing into the jet-black coat, the texture oddly warm despite the chill that clung to the bunker's walls. The cat's milky white eye opened, and I saw my father's face reflected in its depths, gaunt, hollow-eyed, lips curled in a silent scream. My breath caught in my throat, the air thick with the scent of decay and something else, something floral and wrong. The pipe gurgled behind me, a sound that wasn't a sound at all, but a whisper against my ear, a voice that didn't belong to me. Your father's teeth. The word slithered through my mind, a serpent coiling around my thoughts. I tried to pull my hand away, but the cat's body was a weight against my palm, its fur now damp with something that wasn't due. I tasted grit in my mouth, a coarse bitter residue that clung to my tongue like old blood. The cat's eye pulsed, the glow of my father's face flickering like a dying bulb. I spat, the motion violent, the taste of teeth filling my mouth sharp, jagged, alien. The pipe's whisper grew louder, a sound that wasn't a sound, but a presence pressing against my skull. My fingers trembled, the cat's fur now slick with something that felt like the remnants of a scream. I could feel the weight of my father's gaze, the weight of his teeth, the weight of something I had never known. The bunker groaned, the walls shifting like flesh, the air thick with the scent of decay and the taste of something I had never known. I spat again, the taste of teeth lingering, the sound of the pipe's whisper growing louder. A sound that wasn't a sound, but a memory. My father's teeth. My own teeth. The cat's eye pulsed again, the glow of my father's face flickering like a dying bulb. I could feel the weight of the bunker pressing against my chest, the air thick with the scent of decay and the taste of something I had never known. The pipe's whisper grew louder, a sound that wasn't a sound, but a presence pressing against my skull. I spat again, the taste of teeth lingering, the sound of the pipe's whisper growing louder. A sound that wasn't a sound, but a memory. My father's teeth, my own teeth. The cat's eye pulsed again, the glow of my father's face flickering like a dying bulb. I could feel the weight of the bunker pressing against my chest, the air thick with the scent of decay and the taste of something I had never known. The pipe's whisper grew louder, a sound that wasn't a sound, but a presence pressing against my skull. I spat again, the taste of teeth lingering, the sound of the pipe's whisper growing louder, a sound that wasn't a sound, but a memory. My father's teeth. My own teeth. The wall wasn't there when I touched it, not really. My fingers pressed through the antique gold paint, no resistance, just the wet, slow drag of a tongue over a wound, and my palm filled with the scent of damp plaster and something older, something like the inside of a coffin lined with mold. The air sucked backward, a sound like a lung collapsing, wet and deliberate, as if the bunker itself were inhaling me whole. My breath hitched. The cat, still pressed against my side, didn't flinch. Its fur, slick with that morning dew that tasted like milk, rippled as it stepped through the wall after me. No eye. No white eye, no bright eye. No pre-black-eyed eye. Just the void where one should have been, a dark hole in its face like a second mouth, breathing in the same rhythm as the pipe sob behind my neck. The cat's body shimmered, not like light, but like heat rising from a graveyard, like the air above a freshly turned earth. My fingers trembled. The wall on the other side wasn't a wall at all. It was skin, pale, veined skin stretched tight over something pulsing beneath, something that wasn't bone but toy muscle, thick and wrong. The color palette of the bunker had bled into this new space. Gold lace curtains, but the lace was swine flesh. The gold was the sheen of bile on a tongue. I should have stepped back, but my feet wouldn't obey. The floor beneath me wasn't wood anymore. It was wet, the texture of sun-bleached parchment, soft and giving under my boots. The cat's claws left prints in the surface, dark and jagged, like the scratches on the inside of a shell. My hands went to my face. My reflection wasn't in the wall. It was Twimby the wall. A version of me but wrong, my fingers too long, my eyes too wide, my mouth stretched into a grin that wasn't mine. The reflection pulsed once, twice like a heartbeat, and the cat's body did the same. Not a purr, not a sound. Just the slow, deliberate throbbing of something alive inside the dark. The pipe behind me gurgled, a voice that wasn't a voice but a memory, and the reflection in the wall, when my reflection, whispered, "You were never here." The words slithered into my skull, and the cat's body pressed harder against my leg, its fur now damp with something that tasted like copper. The wall, the skin twitched, the reflection's grin widened. And then the cat pulsed again, its form dissolving into the dark where its eye should have been, and the wall won. The skin opened its mouth and screamed. My fingers clamped around my throat. Not a panic grip, but a tentative exploration. The skin felt wrong, too yielding, too smooth, like the inner surface of a ripe fruit. A dull ache bloomed behind my eyes, a pressure that wasn't pain but a premonition of something lost. The pipe behind me, Fuchi, that ceaseless bubbling lament, swelled, a choked gurgle that resolved into words. Your father's teeth. The words weren't spoken, not precisely. They resonated in the bone behind my ear, a vibration that tasted of rust and regret. I tried to turn, to locate the source, but the room swam, the gold-laced skin walls blurring into a nauseating swirl. The cat pressed against my leg felt impossibly warm, its milky eye a pinpoint of cold light in the gloom. It was the only anchor in this dissolving reality. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to recall the sequence of events to find a point of stability. The tooth, the wall, the skin. The voice, my father. He'd always been a man of meticulous detail, a collector of oddities. Teeth, mostly, he'd kept them in jars labeled with dates and locations. A molar from a Roman excavation, an incisor from a whaling ship, a canine he'd claimed from a creature that haunted the woods behind our house. I'd always dismissed it as a fanciful story, a way to entertain a child now. The memory felt less like a recollection and more like a violation. The cat's eye opened, not a blink, but a slow, deliberate unfurling, like a flower blooming in the darkness. It wasn't a white eye, not entirely. It was a swirling vortex of milky luminescence, a miniature galaxy contained within a feline pupil. Within that eye, I saw flashes, brief, disjointed images, a child's face, contorted in terror, a field of withered sunflowers, a hand, skeletal and pale, reaching out from a pile of leaves. The pipe's bubbling intensified, a frantic, desperate rhythm. It was more than a sound now. It was a physical force, pushing against my chest, stealing my breath. I felt a tremor run through the floor beneath my feet, a subtle shift in the fleshy terrain. The gold lace, the bile sheen, the distorted reflections, everything seemed to pulse in time with the pipe's frantic lament. I tried to speak, to ask what this meant, but my throat constricted. A dryness like desert sand coated my tongue. The cat pressed closer, its fur rasping against my leg, a texture that sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't the feel of fur, but something denser, something organic. The reflection in the skin wall rippled, its grin widening, stretching the features into a grotesque parody of my own. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was a mockery, a promise, a threat. The pressure behind my eyes mounted, a crushing weight that threatened to shatter my skull. The taste of copper grew stronger, metallic and bitter, coating the back of my throat. My hands moved instinctively, reaching for the wall, for any semblance of purchase in this dissolving reality. The gold paint felt slick beneath my fingertips, like the surface of a decaying fruit. The skin beneath yielded, soft and pliable. I pushed harder, desperate to find something solid, something real. And then my fingers slipped, not a sudden plunge, but a slow, insidious descent. The fleshy surface gave way, the texture shifting from smooth skin to something grittier, something like wet sand. I felt a tug, a gentle pull, as if the wall itself were drawing me in. The cat emitted a sound, not a purr, not a hiss, but a low, guttural rumble that resonated deep within my chest. It was a sound of invitation, of welcome. I didn't scream, there was no air left to scream with. Just the relentless bubbling of the pipe, the swirling vortex of the cat's eye, and the slow, inexorable pull of the wall. My fingers sank deeper, the fleshy surface clinging to them like wet clay. The reflection in the wall grinned wider, a silent, triumphant mockery. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. The taste of copper intensified, overwhelming, drowning out everything else. And then, I was falling. The cat's eye milk, thick, unblinking, swelled into focus, not with a flicker, but with a deliberate unspooling of a spool of thread. A wet, papery hiss filled the air, not from the pipe, but from the depths of its pupil. The black fur around it bristled, each strand standing on end like the needles of a pine cone dipped in ink, absorbing the dim light and drinking it whole. My fingers twitched. The fleshy wall beneath them pulsed, a slow, wet twiver throb that matched the cat's breath, a sound that wasn't air but something thicker, something that clung to the back of my throat like phlegm. Then, the drowning began, not in the pipe, not in the walls, in the eye. A figure emerged from the swirling white, not as a reflection, but as a fit of submersion. My father's face, his real face, the one I'd last seen in the bathroom mirror, the one with the razor's edge and the water running red, twisted into the cat's pupil. The water wasn't clear. It was the color of old bruises, the same violet-black as the ink in my father's ledgers, the ones he kept locked in his desk. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Instead, the liquid filled his throat, bubbling up in thick, ropey strands that coiled around his jaw, his neck, his wrists. The lacy god, the lacy wasn't on the walls anymore. It was Imsimsu. His skin had split along the seams of his collar, unraveling like a stitching gone wrong. the threads of his flesh peeling back to reveal the same gilded weave that lined this bunker. His fingers, mimey fingers, twisted in the water, clawing at nothing. The pipe's gurgle synced with his choked inhales, a wet twin glug 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 that echoed in my ribs. You are the ancestor. The words weren't in my ears. They were in my chewy teeth, vibrating through the molars I'd ground down to nubs, the ones that ached when the humidity rose. The cat's tail lashed, a whip of black silk that left a trail of static in the air, a scent like burnt sugar and rusted nails. The floor beneath me shifted, not with the creak of wood, but with the slow, deliberate 50s lerp of something yielding. The dew on the walls, milk, always milk, thickened, congealing into a film that rippled like the surface of a pond where a stone had been dropped. My father's eyes locked onto mine, not his own. My mean, the same hollows I'd stared into every morning for years, the ones that had never reflected anything but the dim glow of the bathroom light. The pipe's sobbing intensified, a fur-wrenching sound like wet parchment being torn from a spine. The cat's eye dilated further, the white bleeding into the black like ink in water. My father's body folded in on itself, not collapsing but tutti dissolving. The lace unspooling from his skin, his bones, his footy foisey. And then I was in the water too. Fush, the cold wasn't cold. It was swidrong, a temperature that didn't exist, something between the heat of a fever and the numbness of death. The lace wrapped around my ankles, not tight, but 20 possessive, like the fingers of a lover who'd forgotten how to let go. My father's hands won my hands, pressed against my chest, not pushing, not pulling, but twirling me under. The pipe's gurgle became a chorus, 100 voices all screaming the same word, hootin' you. The cat's breath hit my neck, a hot futa-wusha of air that smelled of copper and old pennies. I tried to scream. My mouth opened, but no sound came, not a whisper, not a gasp, nothing. Only the drowning, only the lace, only the ancestor's voice, bubbling up from the pipe, from the walls, from the cat's eye, and the slow, inevitable pull of the water. The wall gave way with a wet T-slither, not a collapse, not a tear, but a slow, deliberate unfolding, like a curtain being pulled from the other side. My fingers pressed into the damp, fleshy surface, and it yielded, not with resistance, but with Fendi welcome. The air smelled of rusted piano strings and something older, something that had been buried for decades under layers of dust and silence. My boots sank into the wall, not with the crunch of stone, but with the fun sloppy of something thick and wet, like stepping into a puddle of melted wax. The reflection, when my reflection, waited, not in the mirror, not in the glass of the telescope, but in the foodie air, in the foodie space, between the wall and the floor, in the hollow, where the bunker had been hollowed out. It stood there, not with the posture of a man, but with the footy angle of a man, the futility of a man, the switilness of a man, who had been waiting for this moment, for this witty exacti moment. The cat tisted, not from the pipe, not from the shadows, but from the thuven der, from the thuven space, between my ribs, from the thuven spaced, where my throat should have been. The sound was not a hiss. It was a fruit-wet, slow, wet whisper that slivered through the air like a tongue. It was not a sound. It was a touch, a touch that pressed into my ear, into my neck, into my foten, to the thought said into the sort of spaces between my thoughts. Thuvio is not Theo. The words did not come from the cat. They did not come from the reflection. They came from the foodie space between the cat's eye and the reflection's face. The reflection's face was not my face. It was the face of a man who had been tuned to something else, to something unwrong, to something unwrong, to something unancient. They were the eyes of a fithing goin, of a fumira, of a fubiano, that had been struck once too often. The cat's white eye food glowed, not with light, not with fire, but with the full glow of something gone wrong, something gone ancient, something that had been freed waiting. For this moment, for this moment, it did not glow with light. It glowed with Subai sounden, with tweedy memory, with Subai the sound of a pipe sobbing, with Fudi the sound of a piano string snapping, with Fudi Fidi the sound of a man's voice breaking, with Fudi the sound of a cat's breath on hot wet, and Fudrong directly behind my neck. The reflection's mouth opened, not to speak, not to scream, not to speak. It opened to speak. It swallowed to swallow the sound, the space, the seedy eye air that had stepped through the wall and into the fear and rung. And then the cat's white eyes siglowed where, Sedo's throat should be. The pipe sububbles see, a wet rhythmic sigurgle, like a throat trying to swallow air. I know it. I've heard it before, in the old pipes beneath my piano when the water turned thick with the taste of copper. Now it's sobbingy. Each bubble a tiny choked gasp that rises through the rusted metal and spills onto the floorboards. It smells like iron and damp earth, like the walls weeping. My fingers press against the damp, yielding surface where the wall should be solid, but it's soft as raw meat, fusin sloshing, under my weight with every tiny movement. The air tastes of old blood and something else, something that Tursad recognizes, and me. The cat's white eye frin glowsy in the corner of my vision, not a light but a frin pulse, that matches the pipe's rhythm, foo thump, gulp, thump. Foo's not a sound I hear with ears. It's a vibration in the marrow of my bones, a pressure behind my eyes where sight should be. I can't see the blood, but I feel it warm, slick, dripping from my wrist where the wall's edges fuck out me. The pipe's bubbles supple louder, each one a tiny fuck link against the metal, like a single drop of blood hitting a cold surface. My fingers slip through the wall, not sinking but unfolding, like the wall is dissolving into the blood and the sobbing. The reflection waits, still as ever, but now the space between the wall and the floor ripples, and the cat's white eye pulses. Not a steady glow, but a slow, wet foot-throb that matches the pipe's gasps. It pulses where my throat should be, where the blood is pooling, where the sobbing pipe is breathing into my skin. I feel the wall yield beneath my fingertips, not with resistance, but with a welcome that feels like a hand closing around my wrist. The pipe's bubbles gurgle. Harder, a choked, wet sound as my fingers slide through the wall into the dark space where the reflection stands. The cat's white eye twin pulses in throb, right where my throat should be.